All right. I want to welcome you to a very special interview today with the beloved Santa Claus. I'm so excited. Over a decade, Felix Estridge has played the iconic Santa Claus. He's donned his red suit at the Neiman Marcus downtown store in Dallas, Texas, and he's brought such joy and countless memories to families and friends, including mine. For many years, I brought my grandchildren down to the downtown Neiman Marcus store. We'd always have hot chocolate, and then we'd go see this Santa. So stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
All right. I can't wait to start this show and have everyone appreciate someone like you who has donned this suit all these years and played Santa Claus. So Felix Estridge, Santa Claus, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Valerie.
Oh. How many years have you done this?
Well, I first started back in 1973, just in elementary school, doing a Christmas play, doing it for the first time.
There's a story behind that. Tell us.
My grandmother made a suit from just material she had. She was a seamstress. She cut the beard out of construction paper and glued cotton on it and made everything, the mustache and all that. Hat, I wore rubber boots, and I portrayed Santa Claus in a Christmas play in elementary school. That was the first time. Did it again later in high school for a budding film producer, classmate, and a film he made at the holidays. And then picked it up here in the Dallas area in 2004, where my sister-in-law had her shop in downtown Rockwall, home goods store, and asked me if I'd come portray Santa Claus for her. She picked out a suit, and I wore it, grew out a beard, which I hadn't had.
Wow.
Went snow white, which was important because, as the story says, the beard on his chin was as white as the snow.
What if it hadn't been? Sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask that. What would you have done?
What would I have done?
Uh-huh.
I would have probably found one and glued it on my face like many fellas still do.
Okay.
But I started growing, and I had a very short beard that first time, but it kept growing, and I let it grow. And I'm very fortunate that my beard grows at a very fast rate, faster than a lot of gentlemen. So I can get a beard like this in about 5 months.
Wow. You know, Santa, I have to ask, I'll go in between Santa and Felix. I have to ask, what kind of preparation do you do physically and mentally to prepare for this that you've done now for how many years?
Here in Dallas, 20 years this year. I remember when I was a child and the magic that the holiday brought for me. My grandparents, both sides of my family, my mother's side more than my father's side, were into the whole history of the holiday. My grandmother would read the Christmas Eve story from Luke every Christmas Eve. My father would do the night before Christmas. And I remember those famous things that we would do, family traditions. And I recall those all too well still. And I tried to bring that from my own family. So I think of those things, those get me in the holiday spirit quicker than anything else. Of course, knowing the giggles and laughs that you're going to hear from the children that are coming, that gets you really built up. So it's a mental thing. Of course, prayer is is a big part of it as well, to prepare my mind to be as jolly as I can be.
I love that you said that. You're a man of faith.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, because what I do as Santa, I mean, I'm a mere actor of Santa Claus. I'm a person just like anybody else, but I take a large belief that it is a very responsible thing to do this because there is a history behind the character itself, the legend of Saint Nicholas. Um, and in that legend, part of it is a child's first experience in having faith in something. Santa Claus is something they don't get to see do what he does. I'm sure they might see him at the store or wherever, but they don't get to see what happens on Christmas Eve. So they have to have faith in what we tell them. And that is really a child's first experience in developing faith in something. So that's a very important thing in their life, in my personal opinion.
You know, that's beautiful. And I remember, again, back to my grandchildren, I remember the first time that one of them asked me, or actually said, well, Santa Claus isn't real. What do you say to children, maybe, who question you?
Well, it's a valid question.
Yes.
Children, depending upon their age, is how I respond. I'll first ask them, "Are you the real you?"
Oh, that's great.
Of course, they say, "Oh, I am." Yes, I said, "Well, I'm the real me." I never say I'm Santa Claus. Never will tell them I'm Santa Claus. I will, use an I first person reference, but when I talk about things, I'll use Santa as a third person intentionally. And I'll say Santa loves you. And then at the very end, I'll say I love you through the whole experience. And I make sure that I never tell them that I am Santa Claus because, they may see others elsewhere. So it all depends upon how they feel in their heart. And that's what I ultimately say to them. What matters is in here. What matters is right in that heart of yours. And that will matter all your life.
Oh, so many questions I want to ask, sort of about Santa, and then more about you, and then more about Santa. Let's just keep going. What is the most memorable in all the years you've played this role and done this fabulous memory-making experience for the whole family? Is there a memory that stands out to you?
There are many. There's one I'll never forget. It happened on Christmas Eve of 2010. A family was having issues with their oldest, who was only 9 years old, with a sister that's 7. They had moved several times, and they were in their current location in Dallas. And they had an issue with her in that she was in her new school, not having very many friends, not making good friends. And she wrote a letter to Santa right after Christmas in 2009 saying that she didn't get what she asked for from Santa and that she was doubting because the people in her school were being mean to her and telling her Santa didn't exist and things like that. And she wanted to know if Santa was real. So she wanted to talk with Santa. So the father had made the contact and said, I would like for you to come in on Christmas Eve and get caught putting out gifts and sit down and talk with my daughter. So we arranged all that. And interestingly enough, if I recall correctly, it's the last year that it snowed on Christmas Eve in Dallas, was Christmas Eve of 2010. And it just happened to be the perfect setting for this. So the father had put the gifts in black trash bags in the garage. I go in through the garage, fill in my Santa bag, and take those items in. After I text them that I'm ready, they go out the front door to put out the reindeer food. And I get in and I get down on my knee and I'm putting out things under the tree. And here they come in the door and she's first. He made sure she was first through the door. She stops like a deer in the headlights. Her mouth drops open. She doesn't make a sound. But her sister, right behind her, pushes her aside. Santa, and just runs as hard as she can toward me and just hits me full speed. And I catch her and I'm like, I'm so sorry. There must be a problem with the snow because it rarely snows here on Christmas Eve. It must have confused the prep and landing team because they told me you were in bed already. So we have our little introduction. She's still standing back there, and her father's like, "Who is that?" And she goes, with the mouth wide open, "Santa." So she comes over finally and gives me a big hug, and we sit down on the couch across from the roaring fire. And I talk with her and say, "Oh, by the way, we have something we need to talk about." And I pull the letter and their Christmas wish list for that year out of my coat. And he's looked just white as a ghost. So I said, "There's some things we need to talk about." And she's like, and her father's, "Yeah, you have questions for Santa?" And she's like, "Nope, no, I don't. I don't have any questions." So I said, "Well, in your letter here, it says that I didn't bring you anything that you asked for on your list." And I know I did. And I named the things that Santa brought her that year. She's like, "Yep, I know. So she's backpedaling. And of course, I talked to her sister and things like that. And then we wrap it up with me getting up in front of them and telling the night before Christmas story right in front of them. And so we get through, and I said, "Oh, look, ladies, you've got to get to bed so I can finish." I take them into their bedroom, tuck them in, give them kisses on the forehead, and say, "I'm leaving to go elsewhere, but I'll be back to finish because after you've got to be asleep." So we will. And sure enough, I leave. 20 minutes later, I get a text from the father. We have a believer again. So it was a very magical night. The experience was nothing I've had since or before. There are a lot of magical experiences, but that one I will never forget.
I hope you're journaling all this.
The journaling is right here. A lot of gentlemen who do this do write books. To me, there's such a special things. I choose not to put that out there. So
I like that a lot. What would you say to wannabe Santas, people who think they'd like to do what you do? What advice would you give them?
well, everyone's experience with Santa is a little different, how they see Santa. And so my first piece of advice would always be know your backstory, know your Santa Claus, because you grew up knowing Santa Claus a particular way. He looked a particular way. He might have had fur down the front of his suit. He might have had buttons on his suit. He might have worn a Father Christmas type outfit, with long robes. Know your Santa. Embrace that Santa. But more importantly, know his backstory. Know the information behind St. Nicholas, which is really important because he is the beginning of Santa Claus. And that in itself, depending upon how they choose to portray Santa as a combination of religious and secular, or just secular or mostly religious, that is the backstory they need to focus on.
So tell us the backstory. Tell us the
Well,
net
Nicholas,
of... Right.
Nicholas of Myra, a young boy, lost his parents at the age of 4 years old in the small town of Myra in Turkey. That's where he was born. And his family was very wealthy. They were in the shipping business. And of course, back then, that was one of the biggest industries. And this was, I want to say, in the year 300 AD. And his parents died. They were killed. And they had great wealth, and it was all left to Nicholas. And the church took in Nicholas as someone who didn't have parents and raised him. And Nicholas grew up in the church. He became a priest. He became a bishop of Myra. And he took his wealth used it within the church, and then as he learned of people's needs, he would anonymously give to people. The most famous being the 3 gold coins as dowry for each daughter of a poor merchant who couldn't afford the dowry required. He gave them 3 gold coins for each daughter, dropped it through the window at night, and they woke up that Christmas morning, and there was the dowry that each of the daughters. So that's the most famous one that he did. And he did that a lot. He gave anonymously without people knowing what he did. And that started the tradition of Santa. Of course, it is now amalgamated into, oh my gosh, a combination of many different things, Norse information, other religious or secular portrayals of figures that were celebrated at this time of the year. So that's the reason that we have Christmas, is celebrating, 1, the birth of Christ, and 2, that we should be doing this year round, but at Christmas we do it for everyone. We give.
And I'm curious from your perspective, having done this so long, are we losing the real meaning of Christmas? What's the trend that you're seeing?
Well, it is without a doubt a more retail holiday than ever. But I believe deep down in my heart that the true meaning of Christmas, or as we call it amongst a group of us here in Texas, the Lone Star Santas, Christmas, we believe that he is the reason for the season, and we share that when we see that need voiced. We don't push it. We just see that someone needs to have that discussion, and we do.
Well, we all need Santa all year long. And you are smiling the whole time. And you said something to me I thought was very powerful. One of your top takeaways. You said smiling is our gift to others. And I remember, Felix, one time a woman said to me, I've told this story before, but I will again now, said to me years ago, "Why do you smile so much?" And that's kind of how she said it. I wish at the time I had had a quick, good answer that would have been, because there's less wrinkles than when you frown, but I didn't have it at that time. But I'll never forget that. I walked away a little stunned, and then I reflected and thought, back to you. Who are you? Look in the mirror, all of us. How often do we smile? And I've got a beautiful story on that. I was coaching a gentleman many years ago, an executive, who was wanting to create a better presence. And that's my niche, professionalism in the workplace, how you look, act, walk, talk, and are. So how you show up, your presence, your image. And he said, I'm divorced, I want a date, and I need your help. Now that's an interesting start of a coaching engagement, isn't it?
Very.
So he really hadn't smiled much until then, till he said, I'm going to date. And this just happened. I said, stop right there. And he said, what? And I said, do what you just did. He said, what are you talking about? I said, you have a beautiful smile. And then he started that grin again. Next time I met him was in his office. Very shy man. He continued to come to me, and this time it was the first time in his office that I went to him. And he had the technology people put the big smiley face to scroll across his computer face to remind him to smile.
Perfect.
I think that's great.
Well, let me tell you something. There's a fellow here at Neiman Marcus who's been taking the photos for Santa for almost 25 years. 24 this year, in fact. And he is the one that creates the smiles here. And his name is Shay Cannon. Shay, please come in.
Oh,
Shay uses
great.
an approach that no other photographer I've ever worked with has ever done.
Hi, Shay.
Valerie, how are you?
I am good. Tell us more.
Well, basically, my main job here is to try to get natural smiles. I don't want the whole cheese, a smile. I try to just do it organically, naturally. And way I do that is just I play with the kids. I have a great time with them.
And he plays with me. I kid you not, my cheeks hurt on Christmas Day.
So a lot of the parents ask, what do I say? How do I get them to smile? Because a lot of the times I'm real quick, but because I want to get my photos taken for the parents, for that memory to be captured. And then I turn it over and let him do what he needs to do by getting the lists and getting the wishes and the dreams all fulfilled. So my job is for the parents. His job is for the kids. So
What a duo you are.
Right.
Okay, I've got to come back myself. And Shay, you've got to make me smile because I hardly ever do it.
I will do it. And there is a lot of frowning on my end, mostly just because I give them weird looks and I'm just trying to be goofy with them. And it's not like what their parents, many other people try to do. So
That's
I've got
great.
a whole arsenal of things up my sleeve that I try to pull out and figure it out. So whether it's infants, toddlers, 90-year-old,
It's amazing to watch him make an infant smile. I mean, almost, I'd say 99.9% of the time, he can get an infant to smile.
Now that is a good photographer.
Excellent.
What a great duo.
yes, and I'll show you everything.
That's great. We'll have you back. We'll have you back on the show, and you can tell us more
will.
about your photography and all the things that I've heard that you're about. I want to go to asking you about parents, since you mentioned it. What advice would you give parents or grandparents that bring the children?
As far as advice, let the kids be kids. Let them enjoy the time that they have with him. And it doesn't matter necessarily the age. I know that usually around teenagers, they get tired. They don't want to be up here. But if they can get up here and share their list and their dreams, and I want to say not be so uptight sometimes, just relax.
Right, but Santa said something earlier when we were getting ready for the show about the stress that sometimes is put on children. Talk about that a minute, Felix.
Well, parents transfer a lot of their own stress into the child, not knowing they're doing it. The child is already thinking, am I going to get what I want? Can I ask for this big item from Santa? Am I going to do good with, my parents going to like the experience? Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to please the parents too. And of course, the parents are out there, and Shay hears them right behind his back. Tell him what you want. Tell him what you want. Tell him what you want constantly.
Or once I get the
Gonna get
photo
it all.
or once the photo is taken, they're like, okay, hurry up and get off. There's more people.
Oh, yes.
Doesn't matter how long the line is. Whoever is here is important, and they need their time.
That's great.
So it doesn't matter how long the list is. It doesn't matter even if they don't say a word. There's a lot of pressure of I need the perfect smile. You need to just get the perfect photo, and it's not necessarily always that case.
That's great. Thank you, Shay. I appreciate you popping on.
Thank you.
Felix, back to you for a couple of minutes. I'd like to ask you about another takeaway that you shared when you said children come in all ages.
Yes. So, I love children, the small ones and the big ones. And the big ones are a special thing for me because you remember as a child, you have a special, unique, unconditional love for Santa Claus, much like grandparents. I'm the world's grandfather. That's the way I try to approach this, is that I'm everybody's grandfather, no matter how old they are, as Santa Claus. So this really was cemented for me back in 2010 when a 94-year-old great grandmother came with her granddaughter and her great grandchildren on the day after Thanksgiving to have pictures made. And at the time they came, it wasn't extremely busy. She was standing back behind Shay watching, and watched her along with her granddaughter and her great grandchildren have pictures made, and the giggles and the laugh that Shay induces makes great pictures, because Shay never tries to make someone smile. He tries to make them laugh. And she enjoyed all that. So after they got up and started walking over to have to choose their pictures, she came to me and said, I have never had a picture with Santa Claus. I said, really? I said, well, you just sit down right here, patted my knee. She sat down and talked to me like a 4-year-old. And she was 94. And I talked to her just like she was. And she just giggled and laughed. And of course, her wish was that her family would have a wonderful Christmas. And of course, I said, well, you know, I make toys for children. So that's all on you guys, you know. So she was very appreciative of the time we were able to spend together. And from that experience, as I said, it cemented in my mind that no matter how old you are, you can't discount the fact that someone needs Santa. So, because that childlike love is still in their heart. And something may have glossed over it, over their life, the experiences that they've had in their life. It's not right at the top like it was when they were little, but it's there. And if I can just take that for an adult and give them that moment to get them to remember that love, that's just even better.
The word love. Thank you for that. And you also shared something about going up the escalator to always look around. What was that about?
This approach what I was talking about is choose a different path in whatever direction you're going, to take time to enjoy what's going on around you versus focusing on the end result or the end target or the end place that you're going to end up in. Enjoy what's going on around you. So I love the escalators here at Neiman Marcus. Of course, if I've got to go to the check the reindeer, as we call it, to the bathroom, Santa gets on the elevator and goes as fast as he can. But coming back, I always ride the escalator. And so my approach is never, ever, ever miss an opportunity to ride an escalator. So it slows us down. It gives us an opportunity to look around and notice the things around us. And of course, you can obviously walk down or up the escalator as much as you want, but just stay on that step and enjoy what's happening around you. Even the hum and vibration of the escalator can bring you some peace in the moment.
You know, that is so wise, because during this hustle and bustle, what I've seen when I've been in the hustle and bustle so far, and I'm on the escalator, and people are trying to get around me to rush. I'm going to remember that. I may even say something like, stop and enjoy what you're seeing.
Ride escalators more.
That's right. That is so right. A funny question for you. So Felix is Felix. Do you cook and do you entertain?
Oh, yes. In fact, Mrs. Claus, my wife, is not allowed in the kitchen. When we got married 32 years ago, that was our agreement. She didn't like to cook, and I loved cooking. So I am the cook, much like Shay is. He's a big culinary guy like me. We've got all kinds of gadgets. We talk about cooking quite often. So I love to cook, and the tradition of the holiday came from what we did as a child. My grandparents lived on the same 300 acres that we did. My paternal did. My maternal grandparents were only 4 miles away. So we spent Christmas in our house with our grandparents coming to our house. And so it was a very familiar environment. So that was something that that I enjoyed. So, and that cooking that we did together as a family was what brought us all together. So, yes, it was a very big history of it at the holidays.
I am not surprised to hear that. And I'm not at all surprised to see you on camera, having met you with my grandchildren. And I want to thank you sincerely, grandmother to Santa, for the memories that you gave us and you gave me. And I was reflecting on that as I came up to the studio today. It's the memories you also give the parents and the grandparents. And most importantly, you, Felix, are doing this from your heart. So we at Real News PR Company here, and me as host on Doing It Right, I wish you all the joy that you bring to others the rest of this year, which isn't much, and all of next year. Thank you so much for being on the show, Felix, taking this time. And I want you to stay one more minute because I always end the show with what I call a Valerieism, and I will share it with you right now. And it's this, kind of a philosophy. The magic of Santa isn't in the suit or the sleigh. It's in the stories and the memories that we create together. So I, Valerie, want to wish you, Santa, and all of the people around you that bring such memories and joys for this year's memory-making, cooking and chatting and reading Bible stories and remembering what the season is about, the birth of our Lord. And so with that, I wish all of you, my audience, the very best of upcoming 2025. That's it for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.